All right, so this is exciting for me because the area we're going to talk about, NIL, did not exist 2 years ago. It's brand new. Some people like to call it the Wild Wild West. You've heard that term before, because the rules of engagement are continually changing. So I'm really fortunate to have these pioneers up on stage with me. And we're going to talk about something, as I said, that didn't exist 2 years ago, where student athletes can profit for the first time ever from their name, image, and likeness. As you probably recall, the NCAA had prohibited that in years past, but the Supreme Court told them, no, 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 you're not allowed to stop these young athletes from making money from their name, image, and likeness. So all of a sudden, a whole new world opened. And part of that whole new world are agents, and one of them, and probably the premier one in the business right now, is Justin Giangrande in the end. Next to him is Brenkus, who you might remember from ESPN Sports Science. He hosted that for how many years, John?
We did 1,800 episodes over 11 years.
Well, 11 years. And so John's going to talk about BrinxTV, his new venture, and he has a show, a programming called NIL House, which is the most watched sports program on a daily basis. So it's all about NIL, 24/7. Then we have John Terzian. John is the CEO of Hwood, which is the world's leading hospitality company, but he's also a former star quarterback at USC.
Yeah,
and
big star.
and he's very, very vested in the future of USC athletics. He's going to talk about collectives, and collectives are groups of boosters that want student athletes to come to their school, and they use NIL as a way to entice them to do that. So he's going to talk about that. And then I have to my right Nick Marquez. Now, he wasn't on the program, and that was a big, big, big mistake, because Nick is a legend in the business of NIL. He's established himself as the leading person helping creators educate themselves on how to better create content and build a bigger brand. He loves to call them media companies of the future. That's what they're trying to build for themselves, right, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, at their core, athletes can be their own media companies, and we want to help empower them to use their voice, not only to monetize that, but to force change or speak out on topics that are prevalent to them. And thanks for calling me a legend. We've got the legend on the stage here, so appreciate you.
Thank you. Anyway, so let me start with Justin Giangrande. He is the premier agent in the space of NIL, and I like to call him the Lewis and Clark of the NIL space, because he's out there with a machete, chopping through the trees, through the forest, finding new areas of opportunity and new territory. So, Justin, what got you so excited about NIL? Because I know you were involved in it before it actually became permissible. You sort of had this sort of vision of what it could become. Talk about your journey.
What got me so excited about NIL is that my whole entire career has been really about marketing and brand building. I've been in the sports and entertainment industry now going on almost 20 years, and I always was really passionate about building brands and marketing. And so when this was coming out that in 2020 this was all going to change, I just thought, what an interesting thing that for years, athletes have really, we've seen athletes evolve and focus on brand building, but for this to be the core principle of how they're going to be able to monetize themselves was amazing to me. I mean, the light bulb went off of what it would look like if Tom Brady I first went off of 18 years old, was able to monetize himself. Well, then now with high school NIL with 15, we've seen these guys build media empires. And so for me, if I just thought it was an immense opportunity to really be on the cutting edge. Also personally, I was previously at Vayner Sports and was there, which is a pro sports agency. I've always loved college, and I realized when I looked at this that one of my favorite things about being in the representation space was I love the process of recruiting during college, because I love college sports. So the fact that now the business could be done during college was super appetizing to me.
Well, that's really, really interesting. And speaking of these college athletes, I want to turn to Nick for a second, because you remember Meta used to be called Facebook, and underneath that umbrella is Instagram, and the whole creator economy is emerging, and now for the first time these student athletes can profit from their name, image, and likeness. And Nick, why don't you talk about the Empower program and how Meta is really committed to benefiting the lives of these student athletes from a content creation standpoint?
So yeah, I mean, the reason we are so excited about this opportunity is we know fans follow athletes, right? When we look at the data in regards to our followers, Facebook has 2 billion users, Instagram over 1 billion. Over half of those on each of those platforms, we're talking about 500 million, 600 million people follow athletes, right? And that's a global platform, and it's an opportunity for these athletes to build a brand, not only in their local community, but at a global scale. And so the opportunity for them to embrace the creator economy for the first time is really exciting for us. We think of them as, with their creators, they're athletes who are creators who have tribal fan bases and a built-in platform for them to again, not only monetize, but to grow their brand and to grow their opportunities in sports and after sports. And we've been very invested in a number of ways. One is like scaling education to literally thousands of athletes and kind of barnstorming around to different colleges and universities and talking directly to student athletes. The second is building programs and really trying to build programs where we wrap our arms around a cohort of athletes or a group that we want to help empower and grow. And so we were talking about this earlier. I think women are inherently a little bit better on our platforms. They're great storytellers. The women in NIL, I think there's an opportunity to be intentional about how we can help level the playing field and help them, grow their brand and monetize their brand. And so the NIL Empower program, we put it together, and it's going on its third year. There's 30 student athletes from across the country who applied for the opportunity to go through a very intense kind of training session. It was about 8 weeks, different topics. And throughout that program, we paired them with brand coaches. We had brands involved in helping them spark deals. We had a number of different guest speakers. And what happened is we've built a community of female athletes ranging from D2 softball players all the way up to Emily Cole and Flau J and these super or next stars of their generation. And we're going to continue to do that. And by the way, I know it's a bunch of guys on the stage here. Our team is run by a former student athlete, a Duke women's basketball player, all ACC, drafted in the WNBA. Her name's Becca Wathen. Without her, it's not just guys talking about sports here. So she's really been integral in growing this program for us. We're going to bring it back for year 3. Would love to get some USC athletes involved and look forward to growing it even more.
Very cool. Well, speaking of USC athletes, former quarterback from USC, John Terzian. No, John, I mean, you're an athlete, love sports. You love your school, USC. And now you're getting involved in a significant way in this new world called collectives. Now, for those of you that don't understand what collectives are, as soon as this whole NIL thing started to grow, boosters started to form groups that would provide a pool of money, NIL-based, to attract student athletes to their school. And at USC, John's going to talk about a collective that he's sort of getting involved with and what the role of a collective is in the future of NIL. So John, why don't you talk about that a little?
Yeah, thank you. And if you don't understand what collectives are, you're not alone, because it's an extremely confusing situation, which is why I got involved. Thank you. I was a 6th-string quarterback, I think, possibly 7th. They don't know, but it's a major reason of why I actually got into what I'm doing. I was a walk-on on the team, and I credit creating Hwood Group, which is a hospitality company and media company. I really credit my years on that team and my relationships and everything that I had going there with what I built today. And when NIL came along, and I give a lot of credit to Justin, because he opened my eyes to a lot of what was going to be happening with this world. I think 90% of the outside of this room or layman's people don't actually know what NIL stands for. The true essence of name, image, likeness, the true essence of why it was created, or why I guess you would say it was ruled okay, is what got me interested in it, which is essentially the student athletes. And unfortunately, just the fact is, it's been the predominantly basketball and football teams for colleges and athletes, but overall, everyone's been profiting off of these athletes forever without the actual athletes making money. And so what I found interesting is being able to help be that person to help in a genuine way do these NIL deals in a real way and how they were intended. Now, with that said, they've opened these doors. I think that there's a lot going on in schools that have gone into kind of madness with boosters and it's almost too much in no regulation in any way. And I think there should be in a lot of ways, because I think a true NIL deal is really good. And that's why, I helped form, as you said earlier, the Tommy Group, which for now focuses on USC athletes, all of the USC athletes. It's a way for me kind of giving back to the school. I put together a great group of alumni, as Keyshawn Johnson and Alex Holmes and some other guys. And what we are is in a true collective where it's a combo of things. There's donors involved, so donors can give money. And when there's an athlete on the team that's actually on the team, you can go out and give brand deals for them. So a car can have a person on that team, pay them to do social media posts, and everyone wins basically, or marketing campaign. And that's honestly why I got involved, because it was something that I saw that the school needed in a better way, and I figured that no one better to do it but my group and the people around me. And that's what we're trying to do, and hopefully go on to do more, not just at USC. The point is to really do the true NIL deals.
Yeah, we'll dig in a little more to that in the second round of questions, because it's really an interesting area where there's a lot of nuance and a lot of rules that are sort of murky at the moment. But I wanted to close the initial round of questioning with John. And John, before we get to the question, BrinxTV, which is his newest venture, and the NIL House is the most watched sports show on a daily basis, over 2 million viewers per day, which is really interesting. So you want to play a little clip before we get into John? I think you got a clip all teed up there, so we can play it.
The NIL House, the epicenter for everything NIL. We're going to talk onions, peanut butter cups, and underwear. Now, if you were to put all three of those into one deal, different kind of show. I'm not sure what you can do to regulate it. What are you going to say? Oh, you can only make $1 million? That horse has left the barn. A surprise guest!
So we get on the plane, and who's there? The ref that threw the flag on my side.
Referee
The referee.
no way! The passer flag is sitting next to you on the plane.
I want my sack back.
New t-shirt.
New t-shirt. That new t-shirt.
These guys are the dynamic duo that power Icon Source.
Icon Source is the leading marketplace that connects brands with athletes.
What Icon Source is doing is hooking up brands with an authentic voice.
Exactly.
That's what sports marketing is. We've got our next guest. Who is it?
It's Cardale Jones, Bo Collins and KJ Henry from Clemson, Haley and Hannah Cavender, Kaylee Mudd.
I can blow air out of my left eye socket.
I see the flame jumping.
I see it flicker. Look at that. We're going to shop this clip around and get some kind of eyewear deal. Champ Bailey.
I think about my time at Georgia and the time I couldn't make money, off my name, image, and likeness.
Lauren Hill was at my school. I used to sit there fuming in jealousy because she was allowed to capitalize on her talents in that moment. You're finally giving us an opportunity to have true ownership of our talents.
Mic drop. That's out. We have the best guests. We have the best news. We have the best show.
We got a pretty good set, too. This is pretty good living.
Boom!
Boom!
How many NIL shows have their own marching band? One. That's just one. The NIL House. The NIL House is the epicenter of all things NIL.
I want my own marching band. That's pretty cool.
I know. We should have had a marching band.
Terz,
today.
you got to get a marching band.
You should have brought him in. But anyway, so tell us about your journey from sports science to the NIL house and how you got to that point.
Yeah, so if everybody thinks about where we stand in media today, it's a incredibly unique spot, because with sports science that started back in 2006, we did 1,800 episodes with world's greatest athletes. We had sponsors for every segment. And we were on ESPN, won 6 Emmys, wrote a New York Times bestselling book on human performance, and did tons of endorsement deals because of sports science, and continue to do on human performance itself. So whether or not it's Nike, TaylorMade, Ford, Under Armour, Intel, Logitech, Toyota, Gillette, Nerf, all these massive brands have had me do segments on the science of their product. What I saw is this opportunity of there are content creators in the market who want to create world-class broadcasting. So what is happening is that it's sort of like the era of grunge, where everyone was just turning on their phone, creating a show, pushing it out to the market. Everybody's doing that. So once everybody does that, you have to create something that differentiates yourself. So BrinxTV creates world-class programming just on as powerful as any network, as ESPN, with a larger distribution channel. It's our platform, social platforms, every TV in every airport, 500,000 hotel rooms, over 10,000 billboards, moving billboards, including time on Times Square. We have this massive distribution platform and content platform, and we merge that with a one-of-a-kind commerce platform where you can actually watch and buy without ever leaving the screen and being redirected, which is a massive value add for brands. So when you put all of that together and you say, how does that affect the NIL space? Well, NIL is simply, it's not only high school, college, pro, it's just endorsement deals. And we do more NIL programming for collectives or universities or advertising agencies associated with colleges than any other platform. And with the NIL house itself as the most watched daily sports program on the planet, what happens is you have this epicenter of activity. Athletes, collectives, universities, advertising agencies, all coming to one spot and benefiting from being populated in one spot. So it's a centralized content messaging platform in a space that is the wild, wild west, but with people like Justin bringing us athletes and bringing us brands, we have the ability to create real, true value for the athlete, for the brand, for the consumer in a one-of-a-kind experience. And it's working really, really well.
All right, so let's talk about things that are a little bit more difficult, because this is all fluff and beautiful, and everybody's talking about this beautiful world that's being painted. What are some of the challenges right now? And I want to start with Justin. From an agent's perspective, what challenges do you find are going on out there in this new wild, wild west world?
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation that's out there about, well, first thing, I think, families and kids think that this is like a perfect market. And so I think there's been so much news that's been put out on certain outlier deals and situations that, we fall in love with the headlines so much as a society, and people forget, that it actually has to make logistical sense and really is it's supposed to be about what Terz is talking about and really benefiting athletes in a real way. And so I think one of the challenges is, I wouldn't say from my perspective, but I'd say from a school perspective, from, just getting everyone on the same page about what this is supposed to be. And this is really interesting for me to say, but I don't disagree with Terz that some form of regulation and an equal playing field eventually is probably good, because if the goal is to really supply resources to these athletes, having some sort of uniformity, because what we are seeing, and some schools are benefiting from it, and that's good. I think there's a lot of schools who have, I'd say, been doormats and have used this as an opportunity to be aggressive and make a name for themselves. I mean, I'll use Tennessee as an example. I know, one of their biggest boosters there, and Charlie Anderson literally said to me, like, look, we've been losing to Alabama for 12 years. If we're going to be progressive and we're going to use this to try to get an equal playing field, we're going to do it. And so I think having some more information and everyone having an understanding of really what is applicable and what isn't. I think that a lot of athletes have a skewed view, and I think that's some of the challenges. There's a lot of schools who want athletes to go there and have stability and give them the resources, but I think also athletes sometimes are making decisions because they see hype and hysteria out there, and it's not really the facts.
So John, from the standpoint of the USC collective, are there challenges that you're finding? Because obviously the NCAA says you can't entice an athlete on a pay-for-play basis. In other words, you can't say, well, if you come to my school, we're going to have a pot of money sitting for you. So what can you do, and what are the challenges that you're facing in really providing the service you want to provide?
Yeah, I think that's why I got involved, was to be kind of one of the good people in this industry, because what's happening is it's really simple. You can't pay a player to go to a school. And I think there's a lot of misconception of that especially kids aren't understanding or realizing. Schools also cannot actually be involved. They cannot have any direct contact. And I think whatever has been happening before, which is why I think there does need to be some regulation on it, there's been too much of a gray area in that. And so what I'm trying to do is have our group be kind of the leaders of the real way. So when there actually is a proper athlete that is at the school, we're not the only one, but we're a great choice to bring great brand deals to them. And that's, with our network, that's with our track record, with our experience, to bring, anywhere from beverage deals to car deals to clothing deals to whatever it might be. But in no way can it be you change from your school to here for X amount of dollars. And that's where I think has been going on. I think that's where it's gone, kind of too much in that regard. So it's about educating everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just make a point. I don't know if you all remember, but in the past, when you couldn't profit from your name, image, and likeness, there's a lot of schools that were cheating. And if you remember, SMU famously got the death penalty and couldn't participate in NCAA sports for a couple of years as a result of cheating and getting caught. And now there's a whole new ecosystem of cheating going on, which is really an interesting area. Yeah,
the one that upsets me the most, I might be biased, but is Reggie Bush, who did nothing wrong, and look at what's happening today. It's an unfortunate thing, and
Right. So Nick, I mean, with what you're trying to do at Meta, you must be facing some challenges as well in this whole new area that you've undertaken.
Yeah, this could go a number of ways. When I think about the challenges from an athlete perspective, what we hear time and time again is, I don't know how to get started. I don't know what to do. And so that's why we spend so much time really drilling into education that starts with very simple things like, how do you build your profile? But really, like, how do you keep yourself safe? How do you mitigate bullying, harassment, racism? What are the tools you can use on our platform to be proactive before you get started? That grows into, how do you grow an audience? How do you create an engaged audience? What are the ways, we talked about this yesterday, you create content that you're building that you can bring to a brand versus selling your posts or selling your feed to brands that may not be endemic to your ethos or your passions. And then that grows into, how do you monetize? And there's a number of ways to do that, right? So much of NIL focuses on brand deals, but again, there's a myriad of ways in regards to the creator economy, whether that's creating your own merch, whether that's building an NFT, whether that's tapping into things like user pay that are happening on YouTube and other platforms as well as ours, right? We want to make sure that they know all of the opportunities that are available to them. I'm really passionate about, there's a top 1% who have agents who are going to be locked in, and it's obvious, it's almost like working with professional athletes now. But then there is this massive, other 90% that are fantastic storytellers that can make real impact in their lives. And so when I think about from a brand perspective, there's also challenges in knowing where to go and who to go to and how to find these athletes, right? And so we want to help be a middle ground in that regard. We're not facilitating deals, but we do work very closely with specific brands to help bring a cohort of athletes to them for a package that they can activate on their behalf. I could get into the challenges around social media and things like that. Things are consistently changing. It's one of the reasons I love working in this industry. Every 6 months is different.
That's for sure. Every 3 months, every day.
I think regulation, obviously, I would love to see some form of that come down. I worry that they're not, they're not thinking about what I just mentioned in regards to creator economy and how do you report those earnings and, all of the different ways that you can monetize that you may take away from an athlete by, being short-sighted and how you might want to think holistically about this.
No, very interesting. And John, you're a new media company. You're going all in a new space. NIL House is a program that you came up with when everything was just sort of evolving. So going forward in your position, what are some of the challenges that you find exist? Is it educating people? Is it figuring out how to take the next step? Tell us.
I think that what everyone needs to understand is that NIL, even when we talk about regulation, I'm the voice of the advocate for the student athlete or just the human being who happens to be attending a university. What we created is a one-of-a-kind platform that creates the mechanism by which someone can get paid legally. So whether or not it's if a company X says, I want to pay an athlete, they can't just write a check and say, I wrote them a check. The athlete needs to do something for it. Having a program, being on a program, is the mechanism by which you can pay someone. So we have more programming with more collectives because the collectives who understand that the challenge is making sure your student athlete is doing something to get money, that is the key. Collectives that don't understand that are going to suffer because they're going to say, well, we're just going to say it's great to be a part of us. It's not. That athlete wants to get paid, but they have to do something. So we're creating shows for individual collectives in addition to the NIL House. And if you think about the model that SportsCenter is to ESPN, ESPN is a rights holder. They have MLB and NBA, NFL, and they have a show called SportsCenter that highlights the licenses that they have. We at Brinks, we have the NIL House. We have contracts with the Ohio State and Penn State and West Virginia and Florida State and all these universities who are creating their own shows on the Brinks platform that we highlight. And by doing that, when an athlete comes on their show and does something, that creates a mechanism by which they can get paid. And the reason why I'm such an advocate for saying, look, I'm not sure about this regulation thing, is if you listen to what Marcellus Wiley was saying, when he was at Columbia, Lauryn Hill was in the Fugees, and Lauryn Hill was making millions and millions of dollars as a student at Columbia. She had a scholarship she had a music scholarship. You think about the people who go to Juilliard. There is no regulation on putting out an album and selling it out of whether it's your trunk of your car, playing the stadium, doing anything. You can do whatever you want. The fact that student athletes are being singled out, but we want to restrict how much money you can make. Then my workaround that I say to every student athlete is, then go start a lawn mowing company because they don't regulate that. So you can be the quarterback and have a lawn mowing business and make millions of dollars, and that's not regulated. So being you, if I can be a supermodel at a university, and if I can be on the cover of Vogue and get paid $10 million and I'm just a beautiful person, why do we want to regulate someone who's just playing a sport? Let these kids and let these people monetize themselves and not be restricted, because athletics should not be singled out.
All right, well, that's really interesting. Go ahead, Nick.
I agree on the part you said about measuring the and what, right? Like getting paid to do an appearance, a social post, right? And that's where I feel like we could be a little bit more strategic and smart with how we're showing what those deliverables are. Some brands are getting a dopamine hit by getting an athlete to post on their account and walking away. I mean, there's a number of different ways they could actually drive way better ROI if they got strategic about how they use those platforms to do it.
Well, that's what I really like about your platform for collectives is one of the biggest things that I see just being on a different area of this is that a lot of the collectives, they do these deals, but they don't figure out how this is going to be sustainable or how they're getting any ROI. They're kind of making up the deliverables in a mechanism to give the money to the players. And what I like about NIL House is if you're the collective and you do this deal, you own the content with them. So who knows, we all know that content is king. Ultimately, having that content as an asset is something that I personally feel is really valuable, and which was why I really liked what John put together.
Yeah, this is I think this conversation is going towards the concept of where is this in the future and where should it be? So let's have like a little minute or so of dialogue amongst us around the future of where NIL should be, because you have a lot of gray area. It's the wild, wild west. So why don't you start, Justin, as the agent, the super agent in the field? What's going to happen in a few years? What would you like to see?
Well, the positives that I've seen is that I think we've all seen already in the past 2 years that there's been way more interest in college sports than there ever has been. And I think that's a good thing, right? Where I think we're going is that, you know, it's not going to be pro sports, but I think it's going to be eerily similar. I think there's the college football, the idea that like college sports getting to the pros is this major impact moment. I just think we're going to see these college sports really become a lot more like pro. And I think there's going to be a lot more brand activity. I know Todd from Pepsi's here later talking, and I think there's going to be a lot of brands that are seriously interested in getting into space. And while there's major brands that have spent a lot of money to get those major partnerships with the NFL and the NBA, maybe if you're a brand, it's like, look, all these eyeballs, all this attention. I mean, look, we also have a college playoff that's coming, 12 teams. So in my opinion, I think it's just going to allow youth at an earlier age to make money and monetize, but I also think it's a huge upside and opportunity for brands.
What do you think, Nick? I mean, from Meta's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, no, like I said, I think I'd like to see, you know, folks be more strategic and more thoughtful in how they go about finding and sourcing and activating these deals. But really, when I think about the future, like, that's our job, is to bring athletes into the future, right? And so when I hear the word future, I'm thinking about like the metaverse and places where our company is going, and how do we help athletes be first there, right? And how do they grow their brand in new ways? And so we've already seen student athletes be paid to activate in programs that we're running around things like that. And so, you know, like I said, every 6 months is different. So we're trying to think about like, how do we position and advocate internally for the student athlete to be included in the next generation of social media.
Wow. And John, you know, as you think about it from a collective's perspective, what kind of future either regulations would you like to see, or how would you envision this space being, you know, cast in the future to maximum benefit?
I just think it needs to be, it can't be half in, half out with a bunch of vague rules. I think that's where my issue is I personally think where it is headed and where it should be is it's no longer the cats, it's all done. Like, it's not amateurs anymore. So go all in, that make it a professional, you know, actual thing. Like, for example, why can't you induce? Why can't you attract a player to? I don't understand why all the conflicting rules are. You know, to me it seems very arbitrary, and I think that's where my issue is. But I do think where it's headed is to make it a professional, just MLB with a commissioner, you know, that's actually, you know, or NFL, no different.
Yeah, it's great, John. It's very interesting, and I'm going to get to you last, John. But I'm the moderator, and I get to sort of issue my opinion here. I've written a few articles in Forbes on NIL, and I've come to the conclusion that it should just be free market. I mean, it might even incentivize athletes to stay in school longer, because, hey, I can make money, but I can also get an education, and it might make sense for me to stay as opposed to risk being a pro. Like, if you're LeBron James, you're going to go right from high school to the pros. I mean, there's no question. But there's 460,000 student athletes. So why not allow them to just let free market conditions dictate how much money they can make being a student athlete? Why not? So that's my opinion. And John, you may share that, or I don't know what you think.
I'm 100% on board with, look, it's free market. And when everyone's like, oh my God, we can't give this money to these kids because they'll be irresponsible with it. You're like, why are you picking a student athlete of being irresponsible? Justin Bieber was sitting in his apartment.
That's not why they made the rule. They made the rule because the NCAA, the purpose of the NCAA was to ensure equality of competition. So the big schools wouldn't, you know, douse the little schools. But that hasn't happened.
That has happened. So here's what I believe on the NIL space. And I think when we talk about, like, what's the future for a few years from now, I think there are going to be several things. One, I think everyone needs to realize, look, it is here to stay. It is going to be the free market. If you govern it too much, there will be entities that pop up that somehow are Alabama tangential. It's just going to be something money. Everybody's going to go where the money flows. When people are saying, God, these kids are getting paid too much money and it's a bad investment, the market will determine that. I mean, if company X wants to spend $10 million on some kid that they think is great and he blows his knees out and it turns out that it's not a good investment, that's on the company. They decided to do it and they're not going to do it again. So it's kind of like the tech bubble. Everything came up, everything was worth $1 gazillion and the companies went away that didn't work. But then if you look at the trickle down and you say, well, we're looking at college athletes, it really goes down to high school because NIL is now legal in over 30 states. Georgia, Florida, and Texas have not legalized NIL, but they will. And when they do, everyone's moving to where the money is at high school. And then if we say, well, should we allow it in high school? I say, of course. I always use I can be Justin Bieber and write a song and make money in high school. If what you then look is say, well, where does it go? Is it intermediate school? Is it elementary school? Are we like sponsoring, pre-K kids now? We might, and that might be fine.
I have a great pre-K kid for you.
Exactly. If you think about Honey Boo Boo and the Discovery Channel show with this giant, or the TLC show, it's let the free market decide what a good investment is, and then the businesses emerge based on the free market.
Facebook was born in a dorm room. You can use that.
That's right. Exactly. Should you not have been allowed to do that? And that's what I'm so passionate about. Let the free market decide.
I guess everybody agrees up here pretty much, huh? I mean, right? Isn't that?
Absolutely.
So the last little series of questions I want to talk about is around what inspires you? Like, what is it that you're excited about, and what is it that just gets you going about this space? Because everyone's in the space. So, Justin, sure. as a pioneer, as Lewis and Clark cutting through the wilderness, tell us what inspires you.
What inspires me is, as someone that grew up loving sports and always wanted to be in the sports business, for me personally, all jokes aside, being able to be a pioneer in something that for 100 years it's been the same, and really empowering athletes and breaking the mold and really trend setting. On a personal level, definitely finding one or two athletes that I think can go the distance and really building their brands from an early age. I use the metaphor of if you had found Tom Brady when he was 14 years old and what would his empire look like. For me, being that person that helps athletes reach their potential. So, I work with Malachi Nelson, as John knows. He's the USC quarterback. I was lucky enough to sign him when he was 16 years old and was rising to be the #1 player in the country. It's been a great ride so far, and there's been a lot of navigation with it, but for me, if we can really build him into a media empire while he's in college, that's something I'm passionate about, and really probably one of the reasons that John has really gotten so much behind the USC collective, because he has kind of seen through the lens of we did a partnership. So for me, help creating a case study and really kind of innovating in the space is what personally matters to me.
Well, and John Terzian, is that the same kind of motivation that you have, helping young people at an earlier age than traditionally have been allowed, and being able to do things like that to make people's lives better?
Yeah, it probably is. When I was coming up, like building my business, I never had anyone help me. I always heard people have like mentors and stuff. I never had that, unfortunately. And so I always vowed to give back whenever I could and be that for someone. And I love people, and I think it's been good to me. I genuinely love, meeting good kids and their families, and when I do, if I can be a little part of forming their career and helping them, then I think it's a good day. So it's inspiring to me to do that.
Nice. And then Nick, I know you're really passionate about what you do, and you love like working with these young people and sort of helping them grow and do things.
Yeah, well, number one, I love being around this generation. I truly think they have a spirit of entrepreneurship and community that is special and unique, and it helps keep me young to be inspired by them. Number two, I think there's true life skills. You talked about getting help and resources. I think there's true life skills involved when you market yourself yourself, and when you start to pitch yourself. And I think we talk a lot about this to athletes about, it's not just doing the deal, it's marketing yourself, it's building a business, it's being an entrepreneur, it's networking with alums at your school, right? These are things that are going to carry you well beyond if you go pro or not. And so I heard this saying, and I love it. It's like, if the pro scouts aren't watching, the corporate recruiters are. And you are building life skills that are going to carry on well after, when you take that next interview. And so for us, I really want to help make sure that we're instilling that as we go about, helping them build their brand on social media. And then lastly, we talked about women, HBCUs, right? There's so much opportunity to help uplift this entire community, non-revenue sports, right? And I think NIL is also using your voice for change. It's also using your platform for change. There's a whole other side of this, which is fundraising and raising for your voice for causes and things like that I think is super special and inspiring. And again, like student athletes today, the folks that are on campus, leading efforts against racial injustice on their campuses or whatever it may be, is really inspiring to me, and I'm lucky to be a part of it.
Very cool. And then John, I know you're passionate about this.
Yeah, I'm really passionate. What's really inspiring me is getting to speak to, when we say kids, kids who are teenagers or in their early 20s, who are just amazing human beings, and they're finally being given a voice, especially among female athletes. I did a TED Talk about how, little girls are they kind of get marginalized because they play little girl sports with different rules and different things, and their aspirations, or WNBA isn't even close to as big as the NBA. And it just seems like, as a female athlete, it's like, well, where's the road to riches being a female athlete? Now with NIL, women are absolutely slaying it, and they are in a lot of ways way more valuable than, I will say, the typical male athlete, because the typical male athlete had things given to them along the way pre-NIL. Now you get people like Emily Cole and the Cofounder twins, and you unleash these incredibly impressive human beings who previously weren't able to monetize their intellectual thoughts for their own name, image, and likeness because they had a scholarship to play a sport. What a shame. Now we've unleashed that, and I am so inspired talking to this generation. People say we're going to be lost. The world is it's upside down. It's not. These voices are as clear and coherent and way more mature than I ever was at this age because of social media and NIL coming together in a way that provides a megaphone.
Yeah, I love that. If you can't make it to the game on Sunday, Stanford women's basketball plays at ASU. Haley Jones, Fran Belibi, these are magnificent people that are like so much fun to watch grow and use their platforms for good.
Go ahead,
I had a question for you, actually. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So something that I just thought about is that, a couple of you said that it should be a completely free market, and I just wanted to pose the question. The NFL is not a free market, right? So there is a cap on it. So I just want to get both of your perspective on if it were, the difference of why the NFL does it that way, and do you think that college sports should be a complete free market?
Well, I would just say that there could become an ecosystem that's developed through bargaining that could involve some, type of restrictions, but at least it will be like a partnership. And that's basically what collective bargaining agreements are about, the revenue share between the ownership and labor or the players.
So you see it eventually going towards something where they would share in which goes back to Terzian's thing. He saw that there was a lot of revenue that wasn't being given to the athletes.
Yeah, I do think so. And I just want to say one more thing about this gender equality thing, because I think it's a really important point. A lot of the NIL focuses in on football because it's the biggest revenue sport. But we're seeing a shift in culture now where women are getting a more powerful seat at the table. And sports is probably the last place where it's really happening. But this past year, we've seen a lot of momentum grow.
You know something about volleyball, right?
Well, a long time ago, I started the AVP Pro Beach Volleyball Tour, and we put men and women together under one umbrella for the first time ever. Equal prize money, equal TV time. You probably remember Misty May, Carrie Walsh, 3 straight gold medals. And women's beach volleyball is now an NCAA championship sport. My wife happens to be a 3-time Olympian in beach volleyball, but I represented Lisa Leslie in her heyday, and I've always felt like women didn't get their just due because there wasn't enough of our society putting emphasis on women's sports. And I think now, more and more, it's starting to happen. I'm really happy about that, and I think in the future that will happen just more and more and more. And everything that's going on here with Meta and what they're trying to do, and all the things that people like Brenkus are doing, I think that's only going to shift culturally our perception of women's sports in a positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing how I think the net on NIL is people are understanding, and when I say people, student athletes are understanding, and also teaching those around them who are not student athletes that you are your own business. You are, whether or not you're a quarterback at a major school or if you're a painter, you are your own business, and you need to figure out how you are valuable to an organization, how you're valuable in an asset to society. By being an asset, brands come, you get paid, people come, they want to pay to see you because you're an asset. You are your own business.
All right, we're wrapping. 30 seconds each. Last thoughts. Justin Giangrande, you're first.
Yeah, just really excited that this is where this is all going. Just the fact that this panel's happening at Super Bowl. If you really think about that, that says about the something that stated it. You joke that I've been cutting down the machete. I mean, I was the crazy person in 2020 sending emails to people letting them know this was coming. And yeah, just excited for the future of it, and excited to be a thought leader and just continuing to try to evolve and be here. That's it.
I think the NIL space is it's very crowded with a lot of people saying they understand it. Everybody on this stage is a genuine pioneer in the NIL. Follow everybody on social. Make sure you're understanding what's going on. Definitely download BrinxTV, BRINX.TV, either on the web or on any app platform. Check out what we're doing with the NIL House and all collectives, and you'll really see how media is evolving with NIL.
I think it's exciting, and I think we need more good people involved in NIL and good companies and brands bringing things to the table. And it's a fun future ahead.
Bring us home, Nick.
I mean, you said it when we opened. I think it's the most exciting sector in sports, and I feel fortunate to have wind at our sails and be able to do something that empowers athletes to make true change in their lives and others' lives. So, yeah, excited to see where this goes.
All right. No, that was a fascinating and amazing session. Thank you, guys. Everybody, let's give them a hand.